Welcome, and in this lesson, we're going to talk about AWS services that are required for the CSA as they relate to management. So IAM, or Identity Access Management, is probably going to be one of the most popular ones you use in CloudWatch. IAM, Identity Access Management, is a web service that allows for managing permissions to AWS web services. You can define resource level permissions and API call permissions based off of the user, group, or even the resource. API keys and roles are used to manage access to the AWS API in order to allow for integration into the SDKs. So, for example, if I wanted to give a set of users or the developer team the ability to start EC2 instances inside of the US East 1 region, but I did not want them to be able to terminate instances, I could define that inside of our identity access management. We could create a group and say that they had access to only start EC2 instances and to shut down EC2 instances, but they do not have access to terminate EC2 instances. We could also only allow access to EC2 for that group of people inside of the US East 1 region. So it's a very granular, and it's actually based down to the type of action, which goes down to an API call. For example, we could give them permissions to create volumes, but not to delete volumes or to detach volumes from an EC2 instance. CloudTrail is an API logging service that logs all of our API calls made to Amazon Web Services. It does not matter if the API calls from the command line, SDK, or the console. So it helps when addressing security concerns and even seeing what users on AWS performed and who accessed or performed something in your environment. So if you have EC2 instances that have been terminated and you want to know who did it, you can see which IAM user logged into your environment terminated those instances. CloudWatch is used to monitor our AWS services such as Amazon EC2. It integrates very well with EC2 and helps provide decentralized logging and performance metrics into instances such as CPU utilization, network usage, and others, which we will dive into detail later in this course. Autoscaling is heavily used with CloudWatch. For example, you can autoscale more worker EC2 instances if your queue size becomes too large. Or you could start more web server instances if your load increases and your CPU utilization becomes too great. The AWS directory services allow for the ability to easily connect on-premise Microsoft Active Directory with an AD connector through the directory services AWS service. It also has the ability to set up and operate a new directory service from within the AWS cloud that other AD services can use with a simple Active Directory connector from AWS directory services. So this concludes an overview of which services we'll be taking a pretty good depth of detail looking at. Again, some of these services we're going to do more hands-on and more depth, and some of them we only need a conceptual understanding of. So that concludes it for the AWS overview section. Go ahead and complete this section and continue diving into your AWS learning experience.